looks like the sun, it doesn't shine for me.
Welcome to The Conversation. I'm your host, Anthony McPherson. Today my guest on The Conversation is Dr. Denise Miller, Associate Professor at Greenwich University and Educational Psychologist. Welcome to The Conversation, Dr. Miller.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It's lovely to be here and thanks for inviting me.
Great. Yes, Dr. Miller, your journey from a schoolgirl dreaming of becoming a teacher and being awarded the National Teaching Fellowship is truly inspirational. Can you tell us a bit more about how you found the courage to persevere and that discouraging conversation you had with your careers advisor at the time?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a conversation that's really imprinted in my memory, above all memories, I would say, of my journey through education. So I was in secondary school, Blackie Blue Coat school it was at the time, and most of my cohort were not black. So it was at a time where the school was essentially, it lacked diversity, both in students and staff. So it came to the time where you had your careers advice, and I said, yeah, I want to be a primary school teacher, very excitedly. But I was met with a kind of laugh, and although he didn't say anything, I knew it was discouraging. And I was very much aware that, my sister, who was older than me, and also my peers were being encouraged to go into administrative work or working in shops or factories, etc. So essentially, although I came from a background of parents who were progressive, activists, really entrepreneurs, aspirational, all those things, that one encounter with somebody quite powerful in my life really, I would say, deterred me from pursuing a career as a primary school teacher. And it was decades later that, just by chance really, that I decided to apply to train. And I was very good at it. I think that's what my God-given gift is to teach, I have to say. I really enjoyed being a primary school teacher because children are so, young children especially, not so much secondary school children, but they're full of that awe and wonder, which I really find rewarding. And also, as a black teacher, you're able to really redress some of the imbalances within the curricula. And, as a black person being there and also bringing your own flavour to the curriculum, shall we say. So yeah, I stayed in primary school teaching for around about 8 years. Eventually trained to become an educational psychologist at UCL. It was quite a prestigious course, so I was fortunate to get on first time. And then I worked as an educational psychologist in the London Borough of Lambeth for several years before then moving into academia. And that's where I am now. But all along the way, I think my experiences from secondary school stayed with me. I realised the power of my actions and interactions with students, and I don't take it lightly, the position that I'm in. And I make sure that, as far as I know, my students leave my classes feeling inspired and motivated and feeling that they can achieve whatever they want to, provided they put the hard work into achieving those goals.
Yes.
Yeah. So eventually I applied for the National Teaching Fellow, and I was successful on the second occasion. So here I am now.
Yes, fantastic. Yes, you wrote a blog which was posted on Bira. You said that you was inspired to write the blog after contributing to a social media soundbite about Black History Month. Can you explain to our audience what your feelings were when you wrote that blog?
Yeah, I remember it well because during Black History Month, and I think because I had won the MTF, I've been asked to do many more interview sound bites, if you like, about various things, but especially during October. And this was probably the second or third time within a short space of time that I was asked to contribute to something. And I kind of sat back and there was this dissonance that I felt. I felt, what am I doing here? I'm just saying these things that they want, that's palatable for their audience. And am I being complicit in this kind of tokenistic marginalisation of Black History Month? And then lo and behold, come November, I haven't been asked to do anything like that again. What am I doing here? So part of that frustration and that cognitive dissonance that I experienced came out in that article. So it gave me a kind of outlet to express how I was feeling uncomfortable, if you like, about contributing to this tokenistic gesture. It felt like, albeit I realised, Black History Month is really important, it's significant, but it's not the end of history. I don't think it should be. So, yeah.
In your opinion, how can Black History Month be observed in a way that goes beyond being simply a tick box exercise within educational setting in particular?
My feeling is that, I've worked in education for quite a long time now, and I've worked from the earliest setting, 2, 3, 4-year-olds through to higher education now. And I really do feel that it's incumbent on educators to make sure that the history truly reflects, especially British history, the Britishness of everybody, the diversity of the UK and Britain from early years through to higher education. I think it needs to be in our books, and it needs to be all year round. I know that you agree with me, Anthony. So,
oh, yes.
Your banner in the back. It needs to be all year round. It shouldn't just be in October that we focus on accolades and our achievements, and it's not all dancing and singing. We're scientists, we're innovators, we're entrepreneurs, we're authors, we're teachers. All of those things need to be not necessarily celebrated, they need to just be implicit and integral to everything that we do with children and young people, so that it doesn't come as a surprise when I tell you a black psychologist did all of these wonderful things. That's just embedded in the curriculum all day, every day.
Yes. What are some of the effective strategies that schools can implement to ensure contribution and history of Black individuals integrated in the broader curriculum all year round?
I think first and foremost, my feeling is, Anthony, that it has to come from your own personal willingness to make the change. Nobody gave me ongoing professional development about being inclusive within my curriculum and the way that I deliver the curriculum, but that's in my heart and my mind, and so I think first and foremost, sometimes people just want an easy recommendation. This is what you need to do, go ahead and do it, but I think you have to personally want to make that change. And I always say to my students particularly, if you were in a primary school and they told you actually the Victorians in year 2 is what you need to teach, but you've forgotten all about the Victorians, you just go ahead and naturally find out what you need to teach, don't you? You don't think, well, I can't do it. No one says I can't do it. The children need that to pass their SATs or whatever. In the same way, if you really want to teach about Black history, you will just find out what it is you need to do in order to adapt your curriculum. But short of that, it needs to be embedded more explicitly, maybe within the national curriculum. It needs to be an ongoing professional development topic. It needs to be on the agenda for meetings, standing item, EDI, not just in October. And the same within, colleges and higher education. There has to be the will to do it first, and then take the time to do it properly. Yeah. Yes.
What do you think it's taken so long, for this to be implemented? In other words, where are our statesmen and stateswomen and intellectuals, some of the people that are in charge of these specific departments, EDI, Black history managers and so forth? A lot of them are Black, and I'll use the word as plain as possible. Is it that sometimes they just go along with the status quo rather than looking for tangible change?
Yeah, I thought about that, as I progress my career, and, my next step will be professor, God willing. And I always imagine, what will people say about me being in that position and if I haven't managed to affect the change that I would like to happen. And so, yeah, I've been thinking about that question more and more. But I do think, there are some people that look like you and I that might be in those positions of influence and power and might sit back and do very little about it, clearly. For whatever reason, not everybody's going to be an activist, not everybody feels that it's their role or responsibility to effect change in the way that you and I might want to. But I also think your hands are tied sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, as much as I would have liked to effect more change in, the positions I've been in, I still have to go to the powers that be to get permission, if you like. And then sometimes, I know in the past for me, I've imagined things differently and shared my vision, and then it has to be sanctioned by somebody that doesn't look like me, and invariably maybe years later they will take forward that idea, but you're not necessarily acknowledged for it. I think it's a really complex question, and it's just different for individuals, and it might be, I'll be hopefully in a position where I can affect change, but I know there's only so much I can do, because ultimately, Anthony, the people sitting around the decision-making tables do not look like you and I, and their worldview is not like mine or yours, and as a result, things change very slowly. Yeah.
Yes, well, I'll say at least that we here at Westminster are trying to change that.
Yeah. How are you doing that?
Well, the team that works on the EDI and the Black History Programme, they've given me the room to bring my views to audiences and to try and elevate the importance of Black history. And I believe it's a small step, but it's very commendable.
Yeah,
yes.
I agree with you.
Can you share some thoughts on the impact, of limiting the recognition of Black achievements and history in a single month? And listen to this carefully, on pupils' perception and awareness. How do you think it affects children from infants going all the way up to university, throughout all that time without knowing anything about their history? How do they grow up and feel that they're as important as the next person, and their thoughts and their aspirations aren't always geared to a foreigner or someone that don't look like them?
Yeah, you can't be what you can't see, first and foremost. When I was at university as an undergraduate, I remember, and I always tell this story, I remember a lady, her name was Joan Adu. I never spoke to her. I don't even know if she ever taught me, but I just saw her walking around the campus, and I always noticed her. It was as if she just floated around, and in my mind's eye I can still see her now. I think subtly she kind of communicated the notion that academia is somewhere that I could eventually go to, because here she was, somebody that looked like me, That was the power of just her presence being there. Now, if children grow up with a sense of their real accurate history and their greatness and their contributions to all of the things in the world, and they understand actually that they can aspire to be whatever they want to be, of course that's going to impact on their career journeys and also their aspirations for the future. By the same token, if they don't have that in their lives, could it be, hypothetically, the gaps in the awarding gaps, that we see in higher education nowadays, that might be a contributory factor. The message is just being subtly communicated to us that actually all of these things are not, all of these high achieving or aspirational goals that other people might have are not necessarily something that we have the skills or ability or intellect or whatever it is to achieve. And so we might limit ourselves as a result. So I think it's highly, highly important. It's really important that children have those from the get-go. You know, they walk into a nursery classroom, they see people that are diverse teaching them. They see the leaders of that organisation also being diverse and reflecting themselves and others around them. And that's communicated through the curriculum, the resources and everything else around them. So that by the time they leave education, that the world is their oyster and they know that they can achieve if they put in the hard work.
Yes. So would you advocate, do you advocate for Black History Year in all education institutes, in the sense of it's known as Black History Month? Yes, it used to be Black History Week when it first started, and 50 years after that it was changed to Black History Month. 2026 coming up is another 50 years, which will be the first centenary of Black History Week. Do you believe that it's high time that the government, yes, the government's very busy now with world affairs and so forth, but should they give people like yourselves, the educators, the office to go ahead and help to format some of these things that can make it a year-round celebration? C.G. Woodson thought nearly 100 years ago that this needed to be done. Why hasn't it gone any further up till now? I mean, what's taking so long? What are they afraid of? It is like back in the days when slaves weren't allowed to read, or, it was a crime for them to know how to write and so forth. I can only compare it to that, as if now we're not allowed to know our history. And I think it's due time that people, academia and so forth, stand up and be counted. What do you think, Doctor?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Akbar says it's a miseducation. We are not being educated in the genuine sense in terms of our history, and it has immense impact, as I said before. And it would be good to get the steer from government, but and it would be even better, if 100 years later, from the start of the Black History Week, that actually it's a Black History Year. But really, I believe what would be even better is that we wouldn't be talking about Black History Year, because this is just embedded very naturally within the teaching of everything that we do. And in my mind, Anthony, we can do this today. I don't need somebody to tell me when I teach education and psychology. I don't need someone to say to me, Denise, make sure that the psychologists that you talk about are diverse and representative of the students that are looking back at you. That can happen when I go into college or university on Monday. So that's what I said to you, I think it starts with the person's willingness to want to do this work. And that can start from Monday morning, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you also mentioned in your in your biography, I beg your pardon, the influence of your parents and their resilience. I mean, has your heritage and family background shaped your approach to teaching educational psychology?
Yeah, well, my parents, they came over in the 50s in the Windrush, so-called Windrush era, and they came over for a better life like lots of our parents. But my parents were so progressive. Didn't realise at the time. I just thought they were, as children you don't really realise the value and the worth of your parents until you get older in terms of the work that they were doing. So my father was he was a property developer, but he also went to college to learn gas engineering. They didn't just rest on their laurels. My mum, she was a social worker, a nurse, and then she had her own business, but she was also very much the activist. My dad was quieter on that side, but quietly confident. And my mum was out there, and as young children, we'd be on marches with her, not necessarily knowing what it was all about, but knowing we were fighting for something, especially for black people. And so that was just a natural, it's in my DNA to do what I'm doing because of my parents and the way that we were brought up. But what they did give us was the sense that whatever we wanted to do, I just know if I put in the hard work that I can do that. It's only as I got older I thought I experienced racism, you know, and knew and got lots and had lots of knockbacks. But that resilience and that self-belief and that quiet confidence was instilled in me from a young age. And, you know, as many black parents told their children, you have to work 2 times harder, probably 10 times harder now. So we've done that. They told us to get qualifications, so you're always going to fall back on that. So my sisters and I had that. So yeah, I think it's now that and my mum, she was a university lecturer, which, yeah, I just took it for granted when I was younger, but you can see where their influence has impacted on me, yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, as far as Black History Year is concerned, having it in all the educational institutes in the UK, do you think that it's something too difficult to implement at any given time? I mean, bearing in mind that the government might say, oh, what will it look like, or, you know, what would the curriculum have to do in order to integrate Black history, you know, in a way that it's recognized as genuine rather than tokenism, as we started our conversation with. Is it too much of a delay by the government? I mean, does it take people like yourself, me, other educators, and I must say black educators, to push this forward? As the government said, the current government, when they came into office, that they would give the community the office to go ahead and make decisions of various things that impact their own community. I think this is an opportune time to hold government to this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything you've just said. And I think, you know, quite often I say to people that sometimes I wonder if I'm being impatient. And then I reflect and think, wait a minute, this has taken decades. I think I've been highly patient, to be fair.
Most definitely.
Yeah, it has to happen. And as I said before, it can happen on Monday. You can go into work and embed this into your curriculum without asking anybody, so long as your students are achieving the objectives of your lecture or the program and they're able to come out the other end. If you do that, actually, they'll be prepared for the world, the diverse world. But in terms of gaining government support, you know, we do have a Labour government now, and it might be an opportune moment for us to collectively make advances to ensure that this happens.
Yes, and being 2026 coming up, being the centenary, that would also be an apt opportunity as a timeline, you know, to make sure this is done.
Yeah. Well, if you let me know, and I'll be there right beside you holding the banner that says I have done for decades, so I'm happy to support, you know, Black History Year. But also, I think it would be good, you know, to get this across the line. And in due course, you know, when my son is sitting in the position that I am in, please God, that Black History Year isn't a thing. It's just because it's normalised. It's not celebrated. This has just become part of the curriculum. Nobody's talking about it because it's normalised. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Miller, thank you so much for joining me on the conversation. It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you
so much.